They did well to win that game too, Parramatta, last week.
Good game. What a game.
Yeah.
It was a fun game to watch.
They blew that, man. They blew it. 14-0 up. They should have been 20-0 up, really. They should have scored it 14-0. I mean, they completely blew that. I wonder whether that might come back to haunt them later in the year.
Well, particularly for their top 4 aspirations, right? Like, I think we all probably believe that Manly will be in the top 8.
I had them in there.
Yeah.
You're not convinced yet, Dave?
Yeah, not convinced yet. No, I'm really worried about their depth once they start to get a few injuries and
Reserve grade's going all right, actually.
They do have a couple of middles out already. Toff Sipley has been missing. Matt Lodge has been missing. Aaron Woods is there, hasn't played.
He must be knocking on the door. He played the entire first half in Queensland and New South Wales Cup last week.
Where's Schuster?
Schuster played all right, they reckon, last week.
He's got a lot of work to do.
Lodgie's about round 7, 8, I think.
Yeah.
Sipley's back. Sipley's back this week. Yeah,
Jason Saab's
they got a
early
little bit of
return.
depth.
He should be back round 7.
Particularly in the forward pack.
My issue for them is defensively.
Yeah, that's
the way they move the ball is so fun to watch. It's awesome to watch how they shift and how quick they shift, and they're not going sideways for the sake of going sideways. They're still going forward, and their strike on the edges is world class. But defensively is my issue with them.
Is there any anticipation of the Manly bus driving down Mount Ousley to Wollongong?
Yeah.
And the boys getting off the bus a little bit, a little bit ho-hum after Vegas, playing the Roosters in front of a packed house at Brookie, Parramatta, always in a cracking game. There's a little bit of, how do we get up for this one down in Wollongong against the team we're supposed to beat?
The only thing I agree with that, Dave, the only thing is that if you get into a game of touch footy with them, they'll beat you.
Yeah.
So if the Dragons...
So Saints have to defend
they've got to roll
hard.
their sleeves up, right? Because...
It's not really their go so far.
Manly will beat the lower-ranked sides unless they have an attitude like Canterbury do. Defensively, right?
Yeah.
We've seen the way Canterbury have been able to defend. But if you're going to play touch footy with Manly, you'll lose 40 to 30 every week, right? So if the Dragons are prepared to roll up their sleeves, then I give them a chance. But the Dragons do have 4 key-ins that were missing last week.
And I would say they're roll-up-the-sleeve type of guys.
But they're important. The Dragons don't have the depth to be missing.
Jaden Sewer, Molo.
Sewer's in a bit of doubt still.
Sewer missed about 8 tackles.
He's playing. He's playing.
He missed about 8 tackles last week. Or the week before.
Hame Sele's first game back. Frankie Molo.
He missed a lot of tackles.
Jacob Little.
My mail is Hame will get it's a first hit out minute, so he won't play long minutes.
I think if the Dragons don't have the right attitude and Manly turn up like they did in the opening 20 last week, it'll be 30-0 after 15 minutes.
They'll
because they can, as you said, Mick, they can put points on.
Yeah.
They are explosive.
Yep.
And I'm loving the way Luke Brooks is playing.
It's going good.
He's killing it.
Zac Lomax ready? You got an update on his future?
This is your baby, isn't it?
For tomorrow's
big meetings next week, right? So,
well, not a meeting. The talks, potential talks.
Okay, well, the talks next week.
Unplanned talks. So
my understanding, I'm sure it's yours and yours as well, is that Zac's still, at the moment, they're still going to ask for a release at the end of, well, I'm sure he'll ask for it now, but he won't get it till the end of the year. And I think there's some people at the Dragons who will be happy if he retains that attitude to see the back of him. They'll be happy to let him go as long as they get something in return. And there's players out there you can go and try and get. I mean, Nelson's the obvious one. Nelson Sofa Solomona, who's a bit unsettled. There's a bit of
Isn't there a little bit of... I'm with you on Nelson. Like, clearly someone that Saints would need in their front row. But I'm always a little bit concerned when Melbourne are getting rid of players. But I suppose that's where Saints are at.
Yeah, I think if the Dragons release him now, the Dragons said to Zac Lomax before the start of the season, we're not engaging any further until after round 4.
Yep.
That's next week. So there's no, they haven't booked in a meeting, but they're expecting a call from Lomax's management again at some stage next week to either arrange a meeting or to potentially ask for another release. Parramatta are circling. Parramatta made it clear they want him. They can accommodate him now. The Dragons won't release him mid-year unless they get something out of it. The benefit to the Dragons for next year is if someone's prepared to cop his 800,000.
Yeah, I'm sure someone will.
And that may not necessarily mean a player swap because it clears up a huge amount of their salary cap for a player that they're not getting $800,000 worth of value.
No way.
So I think they're the two things. If he's to go before June 30, there's definitely going to need to be a player or something involved for them to go. But if someone's willing to take the 800,000 off their books for the next couple of years, then they would certainly look at it. But in Zac's credit, right, in his defence as well, he's been their best player this year.
Yeah, he has.
He's been outstanding.
I think
on the
he's
wing.
picked up Flano's Coaches Award 2 out of the 3 weeks.
Yeah, he's been outstanding this year. So while it's not affecting him on the field, and Ben Hunt said those things last week that it's not affecting him at training, I think in the back of his mind, there's no doubt at some point that talks are going to heat up again. And Dave, I think you've intimated the fact that a switch back to centre may not be that far away.
Yeah, no, certainly, and we saw it a little bit in last week's game against the Cowboys. Zac pushing into the centre position, Jack Bird moving to the wing. Jack's been told, mate, you were given first crack, right? We can only put up with some of your efforts for so long. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see the performance from Jack Bird, Zac Lomax on the weekend, because I think ultimately, Zac is closer than ever before to moving back to centre.
How do we see it playing out?
Well, I find the Parra interest in Zac Lomax quite intriguing, right? Because 2 weeks ago you would have thought, smart move, he's a good player, get him in the new system, he might get the best out of him. But now Blaise Talangi's come through, he's got an option in his deal for next season. He can't talk to other clubs until after round 6. And if you're Blaise Talangi and you know that Parramatta are going out trying to get Zac Lomax, I'm thinking, what does that say about my future at the footy club?
Unless Zac's best position at Parramatta's on the wing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
do you know what I mean? If they got Bentony and...
The only catch there is Blaise played left centre last week.
I think
he's got that try on the left, right?
I think he can play just about anywhere. He's got a bit of fullback in him.
Right centre.
He can play centre. He can play 6, as we see this week, Blaise Talangi. But that's the interesting subplot for me.
Sure.
If you're a kid at Parramatta, and they've got a lot of kids coming through that system, good kids that people have high hopes for, if they're going to buy over the top of them, what do those kids do?
And you talk about player swaps. Like, obviously, I doubt this would happen, but if Parramatta said, we'll swap your Blaise for Zac Lomax, the Dragons would do that before June 30.
Yes.
Yep.
Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
And they'd walk away with 600. Well,
not that much, but a good amount on their cap. So that's where it's going to come down to. At the moment, the Dragons haven't entertained any discussions with any clubs because they've obviously told Zac you don't have permission to negotiate, and they might come back next week and say you don't have permission to negotiate again, and say.
I think he'll end up leaving there at the end of the year, Mick. I reckon it's.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
Yeah, I think there's a.
Unless someone dangles a carrot in front of the Dragons that they think will benefit them long term. Then otherwise, I agree with you both that I think you'll see out the season.
Well, it won't be Nelson because whilst the Dragons maybe have an interest in Nelson, Melbourne aren't going to let him go without getting a forward in return.
Right.
They're not going to take Zac Lomax.
And the Dragons aren't exactly flush with forwards. So the Dragons can't really afford to lose someone else, right? And we talk about the $800,000 in their cap. Salary cap's not an issue for the Dragons at the moment, right? They've got a lot of space. They just need some quality players, and that's been their issue, trying to find some replacements for some of those guys.